Space is one of those things that I think almost everyone is inspired by, and if you asked people what was the most inspiring event in history, it was probably landing on the moon. You know, if you ask people anywhere, I'd say.
We've learned a lot from the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union in the mid-20th century. Now, it is the 21st century, and we're witnessing something unusual, a new kind of space race. The space race between billionaires. 3 individuals who have ventures dedicated to space travel are now fighting to become the first man in space. For nearly a decade, no astronauts launched from American soil, and NASA was forced to purchase rides to space aboard Russian rockets. There was a long drought, but it eventually led to the slow start of a private space sector. In recent years, American billionaires started to get into the industry, with their seemingly wild goals of colonizing Mars, transforming humans into a multi-planetary species, and making space travel the next tourist attraction.
This is an incredible vehicle, and it's going to the moon.
We are entering a new era of space exploration, which is extremely exciting.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket as NASA turns to the private sector to resupply the International Space Station.
I think space travel for all is likely. I think that the vast majority of people will be able to become astronauts in their lifetime.
It seems we've reached a new era in space exploration. Join us as we take a look at the 3 masterminds whose inventions are revolutionizing the space industry. They are ambitious, competitive, and ruthless. Through their genius, they change the world and lead by example. Three of the most influential entrepreneurs of the 21st century, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, and Elon Musk, are on a mission to go to space. What pushed them to reach for the stars in a fierce billion-dollar space race? Our generation has seen incredible advances in technology. For that, we can thank one of the most successful, influential, and notorious entrepreneurs of the 21st century, Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX, the second richest man in the world after Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, with an estimated net worth of $179 billion, is revolutionizing transportation both on Earth and in space. In 2012, at 41, he became a self-made billionaire when the value of Tesla soared. The ambitious and eccentric tech billionaire shook the entire world with groundbreaking inventions. Today, he has a dream, one that many believe unreachable, at least during his lifetime: space colonization. Elon Reeve Musk was born on June 28, 1971, and grew up in South Africa. In June 1989, he moved to Canada at age 17, and then to the U.S. to attend the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. He was 24 when he moved to California to pursue a degree in energy physics at Stanford, but he dropped out after only 2 days and pursued bigger things. By the time he had moved to Silicon Valley, he had a grand vision: ensuring the future of humanity. Musk became a multimillionaire in his late 20s when he sold his first startup company, Zip2. In 1999, he went on to transform the banking industry and founded the incredibly popular PayPal. Soon, he got interested in a more inspiring future, like exploring outer space. His more ambitious goals began to become more of a priority. He had his eyes on Mars. Musk was long convinced that for life to survive, humanity has to become a multi-planetary species. In 2002, he founded the private interstellar travel company SpaceX, now valued at $74 billion, years before becoming Tesla's notorious CEO, with the intent of reigniting the dream of Apollo when building cheap and reusable spacecraft for commercial space travel.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Though space industry experts believed reusable rockets were infeasible, SpaceX was established in 2008, and NASA awarded the company the contract to handle cargo transport for the International Space Station. The plan was to replace NASA's space shuttle missions.
We are entering a new era of space exploration, which is extremely exciting. And it's not just SpaceX, but there's a number of other companies that have developed new approaches. NASA is taking new approaches to things, which is really exciting.
What the National Space Agency would like to do, of course, is to slowly hand over operation of the entire International Space Station to commercial companies.
Things then ramped up considerably in recent years, with SpaceX leading the way. On May 22, 2012, Musk made headlines when SpaceX became the first private company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station. After a flawless liftoff, the Falcon 9 rocket thundered unmanned into space and delivered a Dragon cargo capsule full of groceries and supplies. "Every bit of adrenaline my body released at that moment," said Elon Musk about the moment the rocket lifted off the pad.
First of all, some people don't realize we have a space station. Like, you can't be serious. We have a gigantic space station. It's huge. Yeah. It's really gigantic. I mean, it's a pretty incredible structure that we have orbiting the Earth. And I think I'd recommend, like, man, we've got to do something to educate the public about the awesomeness of the space station, because it is pretty amazing.
Musk has announced that getting humans to Mars is officially one of his main and wildest goals. He has even said, "I want to die on Mars, just not on impact." He hopes that making space travel affordable, around $100,000 per person, would hopefully entice humans to move to the Red Planet one day permanently.
This human spaceflight is the reason that SpaceX was created. And we're incredibly honored to partner with NASA and to make this happen.
The alternative is to become a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species, which I hope you would agree that is the right way to go.
And, it's sort of like the continuance of the dream of Apollo that I think people are really looking for.
The one thing we have under development that is of the highest priority is launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil.
In 2018, he announced the first private astronaut to travel to the moon, Yusaku Maezawa, a Japanese billionaire and founder of Japan's largest online fashion mall, ZozoTown.
I'd like to introduce the first paying customer of BFR, Yusaku Maezawa. Please come forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Hiro. Thank you, everyone. Wow. In 2023, as the host, I'd like to invite 6 to 8 artists from around the world to join me on this mission to the moon.
On May 30th, 2020, at 3:22 p.m., SpaceX hit another significant milestone in one of its most successful launches of all time, where 2 astronauts, NASA heroes Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley, were launched into orbit from U.S. soil for the first time in a decade. It became the first private company to send humans to space and the International Space Station. The astronauts spent around 19 hours in orbit before docking with the International Space Station, roughly 250 miles above Earth.
This is a huge step for us. It's a huge step for the commercial ventures, and I think it's important for the world to realize that we're going into space to stay, and we're going to continue on to then the moon and then on to Mars.
In 2015, SpaceX began developing the Starlink, the so-called mega constellation of satellites, aiming to provide internet service all around the globe. On May 24, 2019, the first 60 operational satellites were launched. The project cost about $10 billion.
And there is that confirmation. We got a live view as it was deploying from the vehicle. Those Starlink satellites are making their way, separating from second stage right in front of you right now. Shortly, they will deploy their solar array, and over the next few days and weeks, they will distance themselves from each other and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit.
In January 2021, SpaceX beat the world record for the number of satellites sent to space on a single rocket, when the company shipped 143 satellites into space on a Falcon rocket. Starlink will eventually be the most extensive satellite network ever, beaming fast internet access to every corner of the planet. But before each success, there were many tests and setbacks, crashes and failures that almost killed the company. In December 2020, a Starship SN-8 rocket crashed and exploded in a massive fireball after narrowly missing its landing pad. Dramatic footage showed the uncrewed test capsule blowing up as it smashed into the ground, having soared to 40,000 feet in its first high-altitude flight. The $216 million rocket is part of SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's vision to transport humans to Mars. However, SpaceX remains on course for success despite multiple expensive failures. Recently, in 2021, they announced their first all-civilian mission to space. Elon Musk is, no doubt, a space pioneer. After climbing to the top of American capitalism at an incredible speed, he has been named one of the most influential people in Time magazine. SpaceX may be leading the private space exploration, but the Tesla CEO isn't the only super-rich entrepreneur with extraordinary visions for humanity's future among the stars. Like Musk, the Amazon founder and fellow centibillionaire Jeff Bezos shares the same obsession. He has his own space firm, Blue Origin. Jeff Bezos was born on January 12, 1964, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was raised in Miami and graduated from Princeton University in 1986 with a high distinction in electrical engineering and computer science. On July 6, 1995, he launched Amazon, which initially began as an online bookstore, but then expanded to a wide variety of other e-commerce products and services. Amazon started in a garage, and it is now an e-commerce giant and one of the most prominent and most influential companies in the world, with a net worth estimated at $314 billion. In 1999, Bezos became a billionaire at age 35. At the height of his career, Time magazine named him its Person of the Year, proclaiming him King of Cyber Commerce. Conquering the internet, reinventing the book trade, and becoming the world's richest man would be enough for most. But Bezos is now shooting for the stars with an even bigger plan: colonizing space. It seems building an empire on Earth wasn't enough. In September 2000, aside from Amazon, Bezos founded Blue Origin, a human spaceflight company focused on commercial space travel. But after its founding, Blue Origin spent years developing its rocket technology in secret. As a Star Trek fan, Bezos had expressed for a long time an interest in creating the sci-fi future he had fallen in love with as a child. When he was just 5, he fell in love with the idea of space exploration as he watched in awe as Neil Armstrong took that first step on the surface of the moon. Bezos claimed that the primary goal of Blue Origin is to preserve the natural resources of Earth by making the human species multi-planetary.
There are so many resources there that we can continue to do interesting things and continue to use large amounts of energy and so on. It's just we probably can't do that on this planet. So my long-term prediction, and this is going to take hundreds of years, so don't worry prematurely, Earth will end up being zoned residential and light industry, and all the heavy industry will be done in space.
Like Musk, Bezos is aiming to make space travel safer and more affordable. In July 2018, it was announced that he had priced commercial spaceflight tickets around $300,000 per person. Since 2016, he has been investing $1 billion per year from his Amazon winnings into Blue Origin to support his ambitious goals. For Bezos, this is a childhood dream. If I'm 80 years old looking back on my life, and the one thing I have done is make it so that there's this gigantic entrepreneurial explosion in space for the next generation, said Bezos, I will be a happy, happy man. In 2019, Bezos revealed plans to establish a colony on the moon, unveiling a giant lunar lander called Blue Moon, which he declared would be ready by 2024.
This is an incredible vehicle, and it's going to the moon. Now that we have mapped the entire moon in great detail, we can use those pre-existing maps to tell the system, it's a machine learning system, to tell the system what it should be looking for in terms of craters and other features, and it navigates relative to that. It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay.
SpaceX beat out Blue Origin in their bid for a contract to land NASA astronauts on the moon, and the company is disputing the decision.
I'm excited to announce that we have put together a national team to go back to the moon. And this is the kind of thing, it's so ambitious, it needs to be done with partners. But this is the only way to get back to the moon fast. And this time we're going back to the moon, and we're not going back to the moon to visit, we're going back to the moon to stay. And we want to have a civilization of growth and dynamism, which means we need to be able to expand out into the solar system.
On January 7, 2021, with his wealth growing at an unprecedented rate, Tesla CEO Elon Musk briefly overtook Bezos as the wealthiest man in the world, as his net worth increased to $209 billion. For years now, the company has been testing the New Shepard, a suborbital rocket built to take paying customers to the edge of space. The idea is that space tourists will be able to catch a glimpse of Earth through large windows and experience a few minutes of weightlessness on a Blue Origin flight. On July 20, 2021, Bezos flew on the company's first human flight to the edge of space, launching 62 miles above the Earth's surface aboard its New Shepard rocket. Bezos announced on February 2, 2021, that he would step down as the CEO of Amazon sometime in late 2021 and transition into the role of executive chairman. He told his employees that this transition would give him the time and energy to focus on his other business ventures like Blue Origin. Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk's rivalry on Earth was already intense. Now it extends to the planets, and they're not alone in this space race. Richard Branson is the third man participating in this intergalactic battle. Branson is the founder of the Virgin Group, one of the world's most well-known brands that have expanded into many diverse sectors, from travel to telecommunications, health to banking, and music to leisure. Its impact has spread across the globe and even into the stars above. Richard Charles Nicholas Branson was born on July 18, 1950, in Surrey, England. His father worked as a barrister. His mother was a flight attendant. Branson struggled with dyslexia and had a hard time in school. At age 16, he dropped out of school, chose the entrepreneurial path, and created Students Magazine. He then started to think big. After beginning a mail-order record retailer in 1970 called Virgin, Branson opened up physical stores and a studio in England and founded Virgin Records. It went on to sign household names from the Sex Pistols to the Rolling Stones, helping make Virgin Music one of the top 6 record companies in the world. With his entrepreneurial efforts, Branson expanded and eventually built his business into the multinational Virgin Group. There are now more than 40 Virgin companies worldwide in over 35 countries, including the Virgin Atlantic Airline, a series of Virgin megastores, and a space tourism company, the world's first commercial space line, Virgin Galactic, that he founded in 2004. Branson had always dreamed of space travel as a child. Like SpaceX and Blue Origin, the company's working toward commercial space travel.
Some 3,000 or 4,000 people out there who, would be willing to spend that kind of money to go into space. And we also believe that if we can actually get that price down somewhat, we're suddenly then talking about potentially millions of people who'd love to be able to have the experience of going into space.
In recent years, the ever-adventurous Branson has focused much of his attention on his space tourism venture, and more specifically, on developing a suborbital spaceplane. In April 2013, the project made an impressive leap forward with the successful test launch of Spaceship Two. By April 2013, more than 500 people had already reserved tickets to ride on a Virgin Galactic spaceship.
More people signed up to go into space in the first year that we fly that have been up into space in the history of spaceship travel. So, so 500, I think 530 people have been signed up. And they're from all over the world. I mean, just almost every country in the world.
I had to pay $200,000 up front to finance this great project, and I think it's just such a good investment because, one day it will be possible for almost everybody to go to space.
In March 2000, Branson was knighted at Buckingham Palace for services to entrepreneurship. For his work in retail, music, and transport, his taste for adventure, and his humanitarian work, he has become a prominent global figure. Branson is also known for his sporting achievements, including the fastest ever Atlantic Ocean crossing, a series of hot air balloon journeys, and kite surfing across the channel. In 2009, he landed at number 261 on Forbes' World Billionaires list, with his $2.5 billion in self-made fortune, including 2 private islands. When Virgin Galactic finally received the license it needed to fly passengers into space, it increased the pressure on its rivals as billionaires Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk all pushed to edge ahead.
And on a mission, he'll be among the first passengers.
Do you have any reservations at all about doing it?
Not at all. I mean, we will do more test flights into space than NASA have done flights into space in the history of NASA before we actually take people up. I mean, we want to make sure that we give people a return ticket and not a one-way ticket.
Well, we couldn't be happier. Everything went exactly as predicted. It was an elegant, beautiful, magical flight. A lot of very happy people on the ground, and incredibly happy astronauts who had what they said was the experience of a lifetime. So we just couldn't have been happier. It worked exactly as planned. So we're one step closer to my flight, which I'm obviously very excited about, and therefore we're one step closer to taking many people who just love the idea of going to space. Well, all I know is that when Dave Mackay, our chief astronaut pilot, got off, he just turned to me and said, "You're going to love it." And what they're doing is we're taking off from New Mexico. It's a beautiful part of the world. The early morning sun was coming up on the mountains, and they just said it. I mean, obviously they couldn't see the mountains because they were a bit too high up. But they just said the whole voyage was ridiculously exciting, and it's not something that many people have experienced. I mean, there's only 500 people in the world that have ever experienced it, and New Mexico is now the 6th place in the world only to have sent people into space. So it's been a historic, exciting day. I think we're almost there as far as the regulation to take people into space is concerned. And once that box is ticked, once I've had my flight, then we'll start ringing up the hundreds of people who've signed up to go to space with us and say, get yourself ready and come to New Mexico and come and have the experience of a lifetime. I'm waiting for the team at Virgin Galactic to say, now we're ready for you to go. I'm hopeful after today that it will not be in the very, very distant future.
Sugar water. All aboard. Today marks the culmination.
On Sunday morning, July 11th, 2021, at 10:30 a.m., space travel came closer to reality when history was made again in the private space business. Sir Richard Branson took off to space and hit a crucial milestone as he flew on his Virgin Galactic rocket Unity to 53 miles above the Earth, carried by the mothership named after his mother Eve, reaching the edge of space, or what NASA recognizes as the entrance to space. The successful launch marked the culmination of 17 years of work. Branson was joined by pilots Mike Masucci and Dave McKay, and fellow flyers and employees Beth Moses, Colin Bennett, and Sarisha Bandla, who evaluated the cabin experience for future customers. Unity's passengers unbuckled their seatbelts and experienced about 4 minutes of apparent weightlessness. The 71-year-old and his team were treated to a life-changing view of Earth. The flight landed back safely at Spaceport America, the world's first commercial spaceport in New Mexico, and cemented Branson's boyhood dream of becoming an astronaut. He described the experience as magical and undescribably beautiful. "I've always been a dreamer. My mom taught me never to give up and to reach for the stars." Branson recorded a special message for children from space and shared it on social media, encouraging them never to stop dreaming. "I was once a child with a dream looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship looking down to our beautiful Earth." To the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do.
Oh, look, she would have loved every minute of it. She's come to all my adventures throughout my life. But it was my mothership Eve that dropped us off and sent us into space. And so, I got a little bit closer to Mum and Dad and up there. And I hope they were watching down on us. I'm sure they were. I think what surprised me the most was I'd always envisioned going to space since I was a kid, being extraordinary, and it was every single aspect about it was even more extraordinary than I could possibly have dreamt of. The roar of the rocket, as well. First of all, the silencers were dropped away from the mothership Eve, which was named after my mum. Then the roar of the rocket and going just straight up from 0 to 3,000 miles an hour in 7 or 8 seconds, being pressed back into the seat. Then, as we came close to apogee, sitting back, saying a few words to kids back here on Earth, and then having done that, just unbuckling and then just lifting off from the seat. And just floating, looking down. By now, the spaceship has gone over on its back and looking down through these enormous windows at Earth, and seeing and seeing 3 people floating underneath me like giant fish, and realizing we were in space, and sort of reflecting back on my childhood of building spaceships out of cardboard boxes, and we built a spaceship that we were in space. It was just it's impossible to fully describe, and I hope one day we can build lots of spaceships, so lots of kids who are watching this one day will be able to go to space.
The entrepreneur beat the world's richest man and Amazon boss into orbit by just 9 days. Branson became the first person to fly in his own spaceship.
Space is a big place, and there's room for a lot of us. The demand is going to be gigantic, and we'll play our small role in that. Virgin Galactic, we see ourselves as the space line for Earth. We see ourselves as the company that's going to do the most for this beautiful Earth we live on.
He boldly went where no tycoon had gone before, to win the billionaire space race. And his journey to the edge of space won cheers from Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, his biggest rivals. Musk wished Branson good luck before his historic flight on Saturday. "Elon's a friend," Branson told The Times, "and maybe I'll travel on one of his ships one day." The SpaceX founder congratulated Branson for a beautiful flight. The respect is mutual. Branson revealed his rival is actually a customer. It turns out Musk was one of Branson's earliest backers. He bought his ticket on Virgin Galactic back in 2006, 4 years after he founded SpaceX.
You know, it was great this morning to find Elon in my kitchen at 3 o'clock and to come to wish us the best. I'd already been to bed, and he still hadn't gone to bed. He's an all-nighter, and I'm up to. Our time clocks are completely different. And had a lovely goodwill message from Jeff as well. And I mean, so many incredible people around the world, and so grateful. And we've been to space, everybody.
It's been a harrowing journey to get to this moment. Branson's efforts to open up commercial space travel have been turbulent, facing repeated setbacks.
Anyway, if getting to space was easy, we'd all be living there by now. Well, perhaps for a few months a year to escape the British summer. But simply put, getting to space, it's hard, and it always has been. JFK made that very clear in his most inspiring of speeches. And although Virgin Galactic is not going to the moon, well, not yet anyway, the leap that we're making in the frequency, in the safety and the affordability of manned spaceflight is an enormous one. The last 7 years have been full of some tough moments and some incredible moments.
In 2014, during a test flight, the company's first spaceplane, named Enterprise, disintegrated over the California desert upon ascent, killing one of the 2 pilots aboard. When the co-pilot Michael Alsbury moved a lever too early during the flight, he was killed when the Enterprise broke apart. Pilot Peter Siebold parachuted to safety. The spaceplane was Virgin Galactic's sole craft, so another needed to be built to resume testing. The crash cost the company a lot. There's still some way to go before Virgin Galactic can be the billion-dollar-a-year space tourism company it aims to be.
Space is hard, and today was a tough day, but we believe we owe it to the folks who were flying these vehicles, as well as the folks who've been working so hard on them, to understand this and to move forward. Future rests in many ways on hard days like this. We are going to be supporting the investigation as we figure out what happened today.
600. That's how many people have reportedly already made reservations with Virgin Galactic for the 90-minute trip to experience 7 or so minutes of zero-gravity weightlessness. Tickets cost $250,000 each.
How are you feeling about the idea of going into space?
Oh, look, I've dreamt of it ever since I saw the moon landing as a teenager. It's been a dream. I realized that governments who built spaceships were not going to have people like myself or yourself or others go to space. So 18 years ago, started building our own spaceships and our own motherships and our own spaceports and our own rockets. And so, today really is a culmination of all that. And I'm just one of millions of people out there who'd love to go to space. And it's up to us to bring the price of space travel down in the years to come, so that many kids who are watching this one day will become astronauts. It's slightly unreal. There's no question. I mean, I still pinch myself. I mean, I will definitely pinch myself when I'm going to sleep tonight, and that's how it should be, because it is ridiculously unreal. And when I think that as a 15-year-old, I left school and
to start a student magazine, and here we are, building spaceships and motherships and spaceports, and watching the joy on, kids' faces as they're watching the spaceship going into space, and all dreaming one day of becoming engineers and building spaceships themselves and becoming part of Virgin Galactic. So it's definitely something to dream about. We've got a couple more boxes to tick, and then we'll be inviting people who've been very patient and waited many years to become astronauts themselves.
The billionaire space race is heating up. Virgin Galactic might be the first platform to open space for all of us, although there are competitors. Fellow billionaire Jeff Bezos also planned to fly to suborbital space on July 20th, 2021, the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969.
I don't know how, I've said this so many times, it really wasn't a race, but we're just delighted that everything went so fantastically well. We wish Jeff the absolute best, and the people who are going up with him during his flight.
July 20th, 2021. It was Jeff Bezos' turn to make history with a flight into space. Only 9 days after Branson's launch, another event marked the beginning of commercial operations for the program. Setting off on a similar high-stakes trip abroad, Jeff Bezos soared past the edge of the cosmos. It was the first launch of Blue Origin's New Shepard reusable vehicle with humans aboard.
Oh my goodness, listen to the roar of the BE-3 engine. We are just about to pass through max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. That was when the stresses on the vehicle are at their maximum.
Max Q.
Max Q is confirmed. Beautiful burn on that BE-3 engine. Liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as the propellants. It's a nice, not just clean.
In 2011, their first test launch wasn't a success. The rocket crashed. But it fueled their need to make progress.
What we need is to reuse the hardware over and over and over again, and it can't be fake reusability where you bring the vehicle back and inspect everything, x-ray everything, disassemble everything, and then put it all back together. That's not real reusability. You have to land, refuel, and fly again. Our ability to get into Earth orbit is kind of right on the edge of what's possible, even when you do it in an expendable fashion. So when you add the extra mass and systems, landing gear, and so on required for reusability, you're making your engineering challenge even harder. But it's worth it, and it's possible, and that's what we need to achieve. So that's why I started Blue Origin. I think it's the most important work I'm doing if I look over the really long term.
Fortunately, the second test flight was a success. The New Shepard, a multi-passenger rocket, reached space in 2015 and successfully landed back on Earth afterwards. On June 12, 2021, Blue Origin concluded the online auction for the very first seat on New Shepard with a winning bid of $28 million. Nearly 7,600 people registered to bid from 159 countries. However, the winning bidder remains anonymous at this time, as he has chosen to fly on a future New Shepard mission due to scheduling conflicts. Liftoff took place at 9:12 a.m. from Blue Origin's Launch Site 1 in West Texas, and the 10-minute flight went up more than 60 miles above the Earth. On board the ship were, in addition to Bezos, his brother Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, an 82-year-old aviation pioneer, and Oliver Damon, an 18-year-old student from the Netherlands. Wally Funk was one of the Mercury 13 women who underwent training in the 1960s to demonstrate that women could meet NASA's standards for its astronaut corps. Damon, a recent high school graduate, is the youngest person to go to space, and Blue Origin's first paying customer, after his father, an investor, purchased his ticket. The launch set a record for both the oldest and youngest person to fly in space. The passengers were allowed to unbuckle their seatbelts and float around and enjoy the curvature of the Earth before returning to Earth. All of them made it back to West Texas in one piece. Best day ever, said Bezos. Ever since I was 5 years old, I've dreamed of traveling to space, he wrote on June 7th in an Instagram post announcing the flight. On July 20th, I will take that journey with my brother. The greatest adventure with my best friend. Bezos might not have been the first billionaire to reach space on a craft, but he is, however, now the wealthiest person to go to space. Not to mention, Bezos' rocket was designed to reach a higher altitude than Virgin Galactic's vehicle. Not to be outdone by Branson, Bezos went up more than 10 miles higher, just past the internationally recognized Kármán line, reaching 62 miles above Earth, but was only there for 4 minutes. Both Branson and Bezos' flights are suborbital, meaning they don't enter into orbit around the Earth and reach the edge of space where passengers experience several minutes of weightlessness. But unlike Virgin Galactic's Unity spaceplane, the New Shepard rocket flies autonomously without pilots on board. This has fueled even more the competition between the two billionaires. Blue Origin officials suggest that Virgin Galactic's flights don't actually reach suborbital space, as they are fighting over what is actual outer space. But Branson's company still congratulated Blue Origin on its successful flight. After a fairly tense couple of weeks in which SpaceX CEO Elon Musk took several public jabs at Bezos and Blue Origin, Musk also tweeted well wishes to Bezos. The complete historic mission was live-streamed on Blue Origin's website. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic might have some similarities. While they were all founded within a few years of one another in the early 2000s, and all planned for a spacefaring future, each has its own business model. Branson's space venture differs from Blue Origin and SpaceX in a couple of key ways. Rather than launching people and payloads into space, Virgin Galactic is focused on suborbital tourism, and it also has a radically different method of sending spacecraft out of Earth's atmosphere. While we know a Virgin Galactic seat costs $250,000, Blue Origin has not yet revealed per-seat pricing, although it's likely to be in the six-figure range too. Those interested in flying on a future Blue Origin flight were asked to email the company, but Blue Origin has not sold tickets to the general public yet. The reusable New Shepard can accommodate 6 passengers, each getting their own window seat and is entirely autonomous. While Jeff Bezos said his space company is approaching $100 million in private sales, we still have no idea how much most people have paid, nor are willing to pay, for the chance to spend 10 minutes aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket as it blasts into space. Sure, Bezos, Branson, and Musk are the first billionaires to ride rockets that they funded themselves to reach the cosmos. But humans have been doing that with publicly funded programs for decades now. Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut, was the first person to go to space in a 108-minute orbital flight in 1961. Shortly after, the U.S. government launched Alan Shepard on a quick suborbital flight, similar to Bezos and crew. It has taken 60 years for billionaires to accomplish the same feat, though they hope to launch a bit more frequently than NASA or the Soviet Union ever did. This billionaire space race is not just a click measuring contest. Great leaps forward and breakthroughs are being made. By putting their own lives on the line, Branson and Bezos aim to prove the safety of their vehicles and the readiness of the space tourism industry. However, the best work to date has been done by Elon Musk. Until now, SpaceX has been dominating with its technology. But rivalry or not, Bezos and Branson's flights represent milestones for both private space companies and the burgeoning commercial spaceflight industry. No doubt, this is an inspiring time for the private space sector. Until now, the space tourism industry had made slow progress over the last 2 decades. But this officially marks the beginning. Soon SpaceX will be joining the race too, with the first ever mission to space with an all-civilian crew, which means the flight will be made up entirely of private citizens. Unlike Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, SpaceX is planning orbital flights, where the passengers will spend up to 4 days orbiting the planet before the splashdown. An orbital flight costs tens of millions of dollars and typically spends multiple days or weeks in space. The mission aboard the Dragon spacecraft will feature a 4-person crew led by Jared Isaacman, the founder and CEO of Shift 4 Payments.
I've been a space and aviation enthusiast since as long as I can remember. When I was in kindergarten, I remember looking at picture books of the space shuttle. I told my kindergarten teacher that someday I'm going to go to space. She told me she'd be watching in her rocking chair at some point. So I've made aviation aerospace a big part of my life. I'm not a thrill seeker or looking to take unnecessary risks. I do seek out what I think are some of life's greatest challenges. Whether that's like starting a business when I was 16 years old in my parents' basement, which I've been fortunate, has developed into a great company, going on mountain climbs, flying in air shows. I think those are all, great challenges, but I think you got to make them bigger than what they are in itself. You got to make it about a bigger cause. And that's why if you can handle a really, really tough roller coaster, you should be able to handle riding on Dragon. But that's the right kind of attitude, right? We want to make space accessible to everyone. The NASA selection process, you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning. And that's because you have millions of really interested people who want to go to space, and therefore you have to be hyper selective in every single category just to narrow the list, right? But this is different. This is about making it available to everybody. So that's probably the most exciting part of this mission, is that we are opening up this crew selection process to everyday people. You have folks walking around today that don't realize in 30 days from now they're going to get fitted for a spacesuit. I do think being the commander of this mission is an immense responsibility, because if we are going to make space accessible to everyday people, we got to get the first mission right. If we don't execute incredibly well up there, that's going to slip the timeline to the right for everybody else who comes to follow. But I'm incredibly confident in the technology that they've pioneered at SpaceX. How could you not be? They land rockets on ships in the middle of the ocean. That's pretty cool.
Out of the 4, 2 seats are considered a donation. The flight is expected to launch sometime in the last quarter of 2021, and the crew members will have to undergo special training by SpaceX, including mission simulations to prepare for emergencies and how to handle orbital mechanics during their flight.
We are here, it's our #1 goal and our #1 priority, and carrying astronauts, our great colleagues here, is a huge honor for us. And carrying humans in general to space and bringing them home is our #1 goal.
Being able to fly a first flight of a vehicle as a test pilot is a once in a generational type of opportunity. So obviously I'm very thankful for it. But I would also say that we've got a lot of work left to do.
I think the discussions and the considerations for the Space Force are happening at levels well above any of us standing here. And so, you know, we're kind of taking an approach. We're staying in the background. We'll see how things play out with it, and we'll just go from there.
I mean, what I really, you know, I would just, I'm a grandfather. I would just love it if kids can be inspired to do extraordinary things. You know, I mean, I was, you know, when I was 15, I left school and my mum found a necklace and sold it for 200 quid. And I used that money to start a magazine from the phone box just before leaving school. And you know, that £200 has now created two spaceship companies here, both employing about 2,000 people, wonderful young engineers, creating extraordinary things. I mean, like, you know, last week we had a Virgin Atlantic 747 drop a giant rocket and send satellites into space, which will be transformative to the world. We could drop satellites off anywhere in the world, and then a week later we're putting people into space. Yeah, I lost my mum through COVID. Just a big thanks for, you know, giving me that £200 and making all this possible.
In the future, Virgin Galactic is planning to fly tourists to space hotels, transport researchers to floating labs, or provide lightning-fast transcontinental flights. In 2017, it launched Virgin Orbit, which is working to send satellites into orbit.
Space transforms Earth. You know, I mean, at Virgin Orbit, the satellites we put into space, we can now launch them from anywhere in the world to any orbit. And without satellites, we wouldn't be able to communicate. There's still 2.5 billion people who are unconnected. If you're unconnected, you remain poor by and large. So we're going to be able to help connect those people. We can monitor climate change because of where our spaceship is going and where our satellites are going better than it's ever been monitored before. We had a lot of experiments on this craft. And so for you know, the cost of an airline ticket, we can transform things back here on Earth, and that's what's so exciting about it.
Branson also holds the promise of enabling us to go from New York to Tokyo in 2 hours. He has described Virgin Galactic as being the greatest adventure of all. Jeff Bezos' success journey is not less inspiring than his fellow billionaires. After revolutionizing the way we buy just about everything, he's now serious about space and has been since 2002. The sci-fi nerd is committed to opening up space for the next generations and is in the race for good to reach the stars. Out of the 3 men in the race, Musk is still dominating. His rocket technology is considered the best in the world. His advances have even reduced the cost of launches by a factor of 20. In 2016, he outlined his vision of building a colony on Mars in our lifetimes. With the first rocket propelling humans to the Red Planet by 2025 and creating a self-sustaining city by 2050.
A future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars is infinitely more exciting and inspiring than one where we are not. You basically have to hate humanity if you don't like that future.
However, a NASA-sponsored study published in 2018 dismissed these plans as impossible with today's technology. As of yet, SpaceX has not planned any missions to the planet. We've come a long way since the beginning of the space race. In 1969, the first person set foot on the moon, making history. Today, SpaceX brings us one step closer to the next giant leap for mankind. Are there limitations for where your imagination can take your reality? Elon Musk doesn't seem to think so. His visions for the future are beyond imagination.
I think Elon Musk's plans are fantastic, and I mean that in two ways. You know, they're marvellous and they're fantasy. In some ways, his ideas, they're driving us. I mean, he's a visionary. But they are fantastical in that they're probably going to take a lot longer than he actually envisaged.
I think it's great that he's brought this out. It's very inspiring, aspirational, but I think it's going to be very challenging to be able to accomplish this in 10 years. I certainly hope we're going to be able to do something like this over time, but I think it's probably more likely we're going to send a smaller mission to first figure out if people can actually live on Mars before we send 100 people there at a time. You know, whether it's feasible, I think it's going to be difficult to figure out how he's going to fund this.
By the mid-2030s, I believe we can send humans to orbit Mars and return them safely to Earth. And a landing on Mars will follow. And I expect to be around to see it.
Bezos, Branson, and Musk's intergalactic rivalry is fueling the modern space race. They might all be racing against each other. Still, one thing unites them. They are all adventurers, thrill seekers, not afraid of failure, dedicated to their mission of bettering the world and always reaching for excellence. Together, they create the world of tomorrow. As we witness the dawn of a new era of galactic exploration and commercial space travel, we can no longer say, the sky is the limit. And rivalry, critics, and opinions aside, if we look at the bigger picture, the battle for space tourism represents milestones for the space industry. It is nothing short of hopeful and inspirational. 3 men with an expensive mind are dreaming of one thing: becoming the first man in space. It is still early days, and it will take time. Still, as they keep getting ever closer to reaching the cosmos, 3 of the most influential and powerful individuals of the 21st century are reaching for the stars and fighting for their dreams in an unprecedented and incredible billion-dollar space race. Is the privatization of space really viable? Or is it only the unattainable dream of a class of billionaires? Will humans one day be able to fly in the cosmos the way we do across countries? From the dawn of civilization, we humans have always been interested in the universe, and even planned to reach the moon, Mars, and the stars. There is no doubt that there's something attractive about outer space. Bezos, Branson, and Musk all have dedicated their ventures to it. While each billionaire has his own vision for humanity's future, their surprising exploits keep us wondering, what's next? One thing we are sure of: they all mark milestones in the race to open up space. And this is only the beginning of a very exciting journey.
Space is one of those things that I think almost everyone is inspired by, and if you asked people what was the most inspiring event in history, it was probably landing on the moon. You know, if you ask people anywhere, I'd say.
And I think we can make that dream become reality.